to the Watts of Power Foundation's conversation series, what I'm calling Fireside Chats with Black educators. Thank you for joining us for the initial chat. And so I just have a few questions that I am going to be asking all of the educators that I talk to throughout the year around Black educators in public schools and private as well, but just Black educators in K through 12 education. And so I know that you and I know each other and have known each other for many years through our work with schools and church and things like that. But for those that will be meeting you and hearing about you for the first time, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into education.
So I think I was 11 when I decided that I wanted to become a teacher. And I got paid $15 in cash to watch a second grader do his homework after school every day. And I thought, ooh, I can make a lot of money helping other kids as well. But of course, that's not necessarily the case. But I always wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a principal first. And then I found out that you had to teach. And I said, okay, fine, I'll teach. And I've stuck with the idea of teaching ever since. I have done some administrative work only because I was asked, not because I was necessarily interested. And it was fun, and I learned a lot of good stuff from it. I did attend Whittier College, where we have a lab demonstration school with two-way mirrors, where at any point in time, people are writing down every single thing that you are saying and every single thing that you are doing. So that prepared me to really be open to having visitors in the classroom at any given time. I'm not shy. I will ignore you or I will engage with you, whatever your preference is. So I'm just accustomed to people being in and out of my classroom all the time. And it just doesn't bother me at all because of my background training at the lab demonstration school. I taught preschool until I finally passed all of my teaching credential tests, which did take a couple of years. But I finally made it and passed it. And then I joined a charter school organization for 9 years, went on to work with another charter school for 1 year, and then finally traditional public school through LAUSD.
Excellent. So how many years would you say you've been in education?
This is year 20.
Year 20.
Yes, I started when I graduated in 2001. So immediately, this is year 20, and it is my 16th year credential teaching. Maybe
Nice.
15th year credential teaching.
Nice. Well, thank you. Well, when you think about your journey in education, can you describe your journey into education and how you see that journey as either a calling or a job? Like, what is that journey for you?
It's been both at different times. So I always wanted to teach, as I stated, because I really just wanted to help others. And I liked helping kids like myself when I was a kid. And then I still liked helping kids and like helping others. So for me, teaching is I'm helping others, whether it be to learn something new or to just become a better person. Um, the other part was you asked about my journey.
Yeah. What was your journey like in education and how you got into it? I know you said as a young kid helped a second grader read and you got paid and you're like, oh, I can get paid to do this. But then like what really made you, what was that kind of, I guess that turning point that really made you say, I want to go into education?
I think just being stubborn, because once I decided that I wanted to become a teacher, I just continued to say that. And then I went to school for child development, and then continued that program where you take a couple more classes to get a teacher credential once you pass these tests. And I just continued with it. There was no reason for me to not become a teacher and not continue in education.
Gotcha. So what do you think is as a 20-year veteran educator, 15 or 16 years credentialed, where do you think is a good start in solving the crisis in education around student achievement or even the Black teacher pipeline. And so, with the Watts of Power Foundation, we were awarded startup grant funding to launch our flagship initiative called Teacher Village, which is trying to solve the crisis of the gap of Black educators in public schools and K through 12 education. And so when you think about the teacher crisis and the teacher pipeline and the lack of Black educators in the public school K through 12 system, where do you think is a good place to start in solving that crisis?
Starting with the teachers and their training and giving them authentic and honest feedback. I thought back to my very first year teaching, and I had some new Nike shoes on, and they looked kind of like slippers where you slide into them. There are no laces. And
Mm-hmm.
in preschool, you can dress a little bit more casual than say that the classroom of elementary or middle or high school. And I had on my jeans, which was acceptable for preschool, and a proper t-shirt in length where you bend down and nothing showing, acceptable for preschool. And I had on some tennis shoes that were sliding. And they were stretchy material. I thought they were appropriate. I thought they were okay. And I remember the assistant principal said, "Oh, wow, you have slippers on."
Mm-hmm.
And me, I said, "Oh, they're tennis shoes. They just don't have laces." And she said, "Wow, they kind of look like slippers." And I'm like, "Oh, but see, they have a rubber sole." So instead of her saying, "I like your shoes, but they don't necessarily look appropriate for this work because they're a little bit more casual. Would you consider changing them?"
Mm-hmm.
I was left confused from the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Another experience, my first year teaching, um, I don't like it when people fight. And when the preschoolers would start to fight, as preschoolers will do with fighting over the play area toys, I would pull them apart and separate them and go, "Oh no, you guys can't do that. You can't fight. That's not nice. You have to get along. You have to share." And instead of saying, "Edith, we have to find a different way to coax the kids into using their words and not and using their kind words and not their bodies of tugging and pulling against the toy," it was, "Here are a set of eye stickers, and let's place them around the classroom to remember that we're there to just kind of watch and allow the kids to work things out first." That is the approach that was given to me, instead of saying, "We have to let them try and figure it out a different way." So then again, I'm confused. I'm putting the eyes all over, and I'm thinking, why are we putting the eyes all over? So again, if you just authentically said, "Hey, I understand why you're approaching the kids that way and you're wanting to stop them from fighting, but at this school, we tried to do it in a different way for them to stop and reflect and think about their actions and behaviors and calm themselves down," I would have understood that a lot better. So I think if you start with, and classroom management is key in teaching. That's why I'm focusing on the classroom management piece right now. And that was just preschool. That wasn't elementary. That wasn't middle. That was high. And all three are different beasts of their own.
Mm-hmm.
But authentic, "I see what you're doing. I do or don't really understand why you're doing it. Can we try it a different way for these reasons?" I think would have been maybe more helpful to me. So having feedback from peers and people that you know are coming from a place of love and that they want you to do well and to succeed, I think would be helpful, because the teacher set the tone for the classroom. And so if the teacher is feeling calm and they're able to create a positive environment, then the kids are feeling calm and the kids are feeling positive, and then they can become more engaged in what it is that you're trying to present and get them to do.
Gotcha. And so, you mentioned the feeling confused, like from the feedback that you were getting because people weren't being direct, uh,
Right.
with you. And so, as a Black educator, is that if I'm a new teacher, coming into the classroom and I'm listening to this podcast or this show, um, and hearing being direct, is that a culturally responsive kind of thing that needs to happen in schools when it comes to Black teachers, or what would be the context for you to, with regards to the in solving that Black educator crisis, in providing that support for Black teachers? But is that something that should happen with Black teachers, in terms of being direct, so that there isn't confusion or anything like that?
I think it should happen with all teachers. um, and everyone has a different personality. So the way I would deliver that message to one teacher with my tone and facial expressions and volume might be different from another teacher, but the words would be the same. Perhaps the emphasis or the, like I said, the tone and the volume would be different, but you have to be direct at the end of the day. We don't have a lot of time to sugarcoat and play with the kids in their minds and their learning, because we have a short amount of time to make a huge impact, and every single second um, has a lasting impression,
Hmm.
which is one of the hardest things to kind of understand and experience as an educator. That I was having a moment and I said it this way, I really meant it this way, but either way, for the rest of your life, you're taking it this way. So I think being direct with any culture is important, and definitely how you present it based on different personalities.
So these are just good principles, just universal good kind of practices for anybody going into the teaching profession, and anybody that's doing that's responsible for you know training teachers, or leading teachers in local schools. Um,
Absolutely.
and so when did you first experience a black educator, and what impact did it have on your life? When was the first time you sat in front of a black teacher?
So technically, I stood because it was my PE teacher, Coach Comic, whom was wonderful in high school.
Hmm.
So I had to get to high school. So that was all the way through preschool, K through 8, so ninth grade. It wasn't until my ninth or 10th or 11th year of education, if you're including preschool and kindergarten, um, that I take it back, time out, Miss Shirley. Miss Shirley was my preschool, one of the preschool teachers in the class, and there are 4 preschool teachers in the classroom. And Miss Shirley was definitely black with this beautiful curly hair. I forgot all about her. Her makeup was flawless. Her nails were always done. Shout out to Miss Shirley. Um, and then my very next one wasn't until Coach Comic in high school,
Okay.
and he was my PE teacher. So you're a different person from a preschooler versus a teenager, right? So the impact is different. Miss Shirley was just nice, as were the other teachers, but Coach Comic was the first time I was aware of being black,
Hmm.
and having a teacher that looked like me. He taught history class. He was known to have very difficult, uh, struck to be a. Let me see. He wasn't known to be difficult. He was known to have a class that wasn't easy to pass. You had to actually work really hard. But that class was only for juniors and seniors. So as a freshman, I only had him for PE my freshman year and my sophomore year before I transferred schools. I remember I'm not an athletic person at all. I'm not uppercase in OT, but everything that he asked for us to do in PE, I did. One time we were running laps, just laps around the track. And I realized that I was the only one running. Everyone was walking. And I stopped and I said, Coach, I'm the only one running, but everyone else is walking. Like, what's the deal? And he was like, just do what you're supposed to do. I said, okay. So I kept running. And the next thing I know, when it was time for like the award ceremony and I was receiving different awards for different academic things, I was also awarded the highest honor in PE. And my family fell out laughing because they know that I am not athletic at all. But um, the impact of having a Black teacher in Coach Comic, I wanted to do everything that I was supposed to do.
Hmm.
I felt the need to work harder to impress him, to show my respect for him because he looked like me in a different way.
Gotcha.
And that continued, if I can add, that continued when I went to college because I didn't have, I had an Afro Cuban professor
Hmm.
in college, which was very impactful. Still not African American, but Afro Cuban, and he understood what it meant to be Black in America. In music class, loved him. And I had to go all the way to Howard University as a domestic exchange student to have my first, as an adult now,
Hmm.
Black American female professor. And that was very impactful. Um, so I just wanted to make sure I added
You
that.
literally can name on one hand the amount of black educators in your life, in your K through 12 and even college, educational experience? On the one hand, right?
On
So,
one hand, yeah, three Black Americans, and then an African, and Afro-Cuban, and Chinese Jamaican. So I'm gonna say
but
Black because
but
of Jamaica.
African American, Black
Right.
American, African
The
American,
African American three.
three.
Three. Yeah.
Wow. And so, um, what impact did that have on you, or influence did it have on you, in thinking about going into education? Did that have an impact? Did you have that in your mind as you were going into education, saying as a Black woman, I'm going into education because of the experience and the lack of educators that I had, or was that even a part of the thought process in you getting into education?
It was definitely part of the thought process. My favorite teacher was a Catholic nun, Sister Clara Esker. She was very much white, and my English teacher. And we wrote letters for years and years and years and years after I graduated. And I wanted to be just like her, except not a nun, but I wanted to have the impact that she had from someone that looked like me.
Hmm.
So I wanted to provide for all of my students everything that Sister Claire provided for me, but with the brown skin and the curly hair.
Hmm.
So yes, I think of all the great teaching that I have received. I've been very blessed to have absolutely wonderful teachers my entire education. There was only one time that a teacher was questionable. He got fired, and that was it.
Hmm.
He just wasn't nice in his words and actions towards some of the kids. We reported it to the principal. That was his last day of school.
Hmm.
Um, but a wonderful education. They didn't look like me, but they supported me, they helped me, they showed love towards me, and I wanted to do the same thing.
Gotcha.
And I purposefully work with kids of color
Hmm.
because all the research that I done was purposefully with kids of color because I wanted to work with kids of color. I wanted to work with kids that look like me, Black and brown kids. So if I can say, literally the first time I worked on my master's degree, I quit because I could not find enough research to meet the minimum requirement for what I was for my thesis. And if the research did not include Black children, I refused to use it because I plan to work with Black children. So I needed my research to be purposeful and reflect the work that I plan to do.
Hmm.
So I literally had to quit. My professor couldn't even find the research for me because at the time it just wasn't there, including kids of color. Now there's a lot more. And I did eventually go back to school with you, and we finished our master's in education together, which was awesome. 6 years later, the research was there in an abundance, and I was able to still focus on my study of children of color.
Nice. Well, what advice then can you give to new educators who are Black, on how to build student-teacher relationships? We in the Watts of Power Teacher Village program, part of the component of the training that we'll be doing is about student-teacher relationships. Some of those soft skills, like in teacher education programs, you learn about classroom management, you learn about cultural responsive pedagogy, you learn about all these different hard skills, but it's the soft skills that are missing, and some of those soft skills has to do with student teacher relationships. And so what advice can you give to a new educator, a new Black educator coming into the teaching profession, about how to build relationships with their students?
I want them to be better than me. It's about finding balance. And when I was teaching middle school, I wasn't able to find the balance between forming a relationship with the kids outside of class and with being their teacher. I was so focused on making these great lesson plans and presenting the information that I forgot to build relationships with them
Mm.
outside of presenting material. Like, it is okay to stop your plan and have an open, crucial conversation about whatever it is that's going on in their lives, as it pertains to the classroom and to the school. You can't just, for example, when we had our George Floyd murder and this big uprising of the Black Lives Matter movement coming to the forefront, and you'd hear about it all over the news. And we were teaching online at the time. There's no way I can pop back onto Zoom with my second graders and say, hey, how you doing? Let's jump into spelling words of the week. Let's work on our vocabulary words of the week. It was, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on at home? What's going on in the news?
Mm-hmm.
And they naturally started talking about George Floyd. They never met them. I never met them, but there was an impact that his life and his death had on us. And then they started talking about being a part of going to the rallies and the marches and the demonstrations that
Mm-hmm.
they may not have had the chance to say if we're just boom talking about our spelling and vocabulary words for the week. So I had to learn that over time. I often think back to, like I said, the middle school time where I'm like, gosh, I really missed that opportunity to get to know the kids in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had a reunion, would they even be excited to see me?
Mm-hmm.
They might have a respect for me as their teacher, but would they be excited to see me with the hug, or like, oh yeah, that's Miss Grant, she was a tough teacher, but we got through it, or we learned some stuff from her. So I do wonder about that, but I do try to do better. So in me wanting other young teachers to do better, I would say find balance in teaching and in just observing the kids and what differences you might see in them, and how you can address their different social emotional needs.
That's interesting. This kind of reflective, after 20 years, the reflective kind of posture that you are finding yourself in, and thinking about your teaching career and your experience as a teacher in the classroom. Um, uh, you said balance, balance between teaching, balance between building relationships with students. What other advice would you give about balance in terms of self-care?
So
Because and I'm asking this
yeah,
question because as a new teacher, you're coming in and you want to be the best teacher you can.
right.
You're going to be up at night lesson planning and making sure you're prepared and making sure you're on when you're on, and you're going to be burning midnight hour doing grades, and then you have a family or you might not have a family. So how do you do what advice would you give about self-care?
So the work will always be there. No matter what amount of work you do today, there's going to be something else there tomorrow. So I would say to set goals for yourself personally, for your personal self-care. If getting your hair done or getting a massage is your thing, or just going for a walk or working out, make sure you schedule that in first, and then everything else can kind of go around your self-care. Because at the end of the day, if you are completely burnt out, you're not going, no one's going to benefit. The kids aren't going to benefit, as in your students are not going to benefit, your family's not going to benefit, you're not going to benefit if you're just burnt out in all areas of life. So I would say when you're making your digital or paper planner, put in your self-care moments first.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should say put in your work hours, right? If your contractual work time is 7:30 to 4, write in 7:30 to 4 is work Monday through Friday,
Mm-hmm.
ideally, right? Then put in your self-care time. And in addition to that, then you have to set what is your goal for the day. So we know that most of the time in the classroom, we're teaching for the hours of the school day. Then there's this time afterward, you can grab your bag and go home contractually, or you have to contractually stay there for a couple of hours. How are you going to spend those couple of hours? Or are you going to choose to stay for a couple of hours, knock a couple of things out before you go home and leave work at home? Some people argue leave work at home. Leave work at work, right? And some people argue, oh, it's okay for you to take some work home as long as you give yourself a cutoff time. You have to find what works best for you. Just know that if you're not living in a balanced way, your students will feel it as well.
So how do you, Edith, how do you engage in self-care? What are some things that you do to ensure balance, in your life?
Ooh, I'm better at it these days. Church for me, it was like a Sunday ritual
Hmm.
of it's my time for me to grow in my faith. And I have a church family. So even I get to see my church family on Sundays is fun for me, whether it be in person or online because of the time that we're living in COVID. Um, Making sure that I do something fun with my kids and something fun with my husband. It's not just let's get the house straight, let's do the laundry, let's get the homework done, but we still have to have fun. So in the time that I spend with my husband and kids, that is like my social, emotional well-being time. Even at the dinner table, we purposefully discuss our highs and our lows. If do you have a high of the day? Do you have a low of the day? You don't have to have a low. You don't have to have a high. You can share two lows. You can share two highs. But it's just reflect on your day, and that is our special time with each other. In addition to, I have two girls, me combing their hair. That's my special one-on-one time with them.
Hmm.
Um, and I know that's not necessarily a me time, but that is for me to connect with them and check in on them because if my two girls are okay, then I'm okay.
Right.
But I do make sure to hang out with my friends and we go out to eat and we have happy hour. And I also make sure to have happy hour and go out to eat with my husband as well, because then there's the aspect of being a mom and then a wife and an educator. And they're all kind of compartmentalized and then being a friend and a family member. So I just try to make sure that I do have my special time with my family and friends as well.
Nice. That's balance. That's
Balance.
definitely balance. So, as we stay on this whole thing of being reflective, how could your teaching experience and journey have been different? When you think back on your K through 12 experience as a teacher, or your K through 8 experience as a teacher, teaching elementary school, teaching in middle school, leadership, and all that kind of stuff. How could your teaching experience and journey have been different? And is there anything that could have been done to enhance maybe even your first or second year as a teacher?
To enhance my first and second year, it would have been to have, like I said, more direct, open feedback for me.
Hmm.
Um, and feedback includes opportunities for reflection of things you can do differently. And then also, these are the things you're doing really well. Because when I look back, my first 2 years at an independent school, teaching preschool the first year and following them to kindergarten the second year while working on the master's, the first master's program that I quit, I don't remember getting positive feedback now that I think about it.
Hmm.
There was feedback uh, with regards to, like I said, are those shoes look like slippers, or let's put these eye stickers around the classroom to remind us to watch the kids and allow them to work their issues out on their own. Um, but there was never, you're really doing great at this, this, and this, this, and this. It could have just been the personalities of the people that I worked with, or the way that the program was designed. And it wasn't bad. I learned a lot. But that just so happened to be my 2 years. I was a graduate teaching fellow my 2 years. So my experience might be a little different from others. Outside of those 2 years of being a graduate teaching fellow, when it was me in the classroom in charge by myself,
Hmm.
I was completely freaked out. I didn't sleep for the first, I think, 5 months working. I had a TA. I didn't know I was going to have a TA. She was absolutely amazing and perfect in every single way. I had no idea that she was going to be there until the first day of school. So that was wonderful. I still didn't sleep for the first 4 to 5 months, I want to say, of that job, because I was so freaked out that I would mess up these kids in their education. I would read over and over again the lesson plans or rewrite the lesson plans to try and make it perfect. And I was so busy on, did I make it perfect? Did I get it perfect? That I didn't have a chance to really stop and think about, did I develop a relationship with the student today? Did I check in on so-and-so? Are they emotionally okay? So I think just feedback in general of someone from the outside observing you to
Mm-hmm.
give you some feedback and to say you're doing a great job, or hey, I have another idea. If you want to try it, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Would be helpful. And that was like a three-part question. The first part, can you repeat it?
Was just how could your teaching experience and journey have been different?
How could I?
So now you're in 20 years, right,
Right.
in elementary school at a traditional public school. So when you think back over your teaching experience and journey, how could it have been different, or would you have wanted it to be different?
I don't want any part of my journey of life to be different. I feel like everything has happened for a reason. God has placed different obstacles in front of me for a reason. God has blessed me with wonderful people in my life for a reason. So I don't have like any regrets or anything that I would want to I don't have any regrets. But
Mm,
but I was honest in my reflection of looking back, if like I said, if some middle school kids saw me, would they be happy to see me for the person, or would it be like, oh yeah, that's my teacher and she really worked the heck out of us in English and history class and we learned some stuff, but I don't even know her favorite color.
mm-hmm,
Does she even know that my brother attends the school? Um, does she know I have two moms? Those things I missed out on.
mm-hmm.
And so I try my best to have a different to bring a different experience for my students these days.
So, second to last question. This question, just came to me, and just in terms of thinking about teachers who quit, um, after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or whatever the case may be, and they leave education altogether. You've stayed for 20 years. Um, I know that there have been some highs and some lows, and so when you think about your educational career in teaching, what was like one of the lowest lows where you were like, you know what, I'm done, and but then what made you say, you know what, I'm gonna come back tomorrow? So that moment where you were like, you know what, I'm done with this. I'll go work at, I'll be a cashier at a local grocery store or whatever. But but for some reason you got up, whether it was the next day or the next week, but you went back into the classroom. What was that lowest low, and what made you get up to go back to still be in teaching after 20 years?
I have to say that teaching is not for everyone. Um, if you ask my friends and family, I quit about every 5 years. Every 5 years, that's it. I'm done. I'm not teaching anymore, but I still want to help kids. So I'll stay in education in some form or fashion. I promise you, like clockwork, every 5 years, I'm quitting. Um, I think one of the most difficult times for me was teaching online. It is not for me. My friends and family will also tell you that I am not a tech person at all. But I had to become one
Mm-hmm.
to keep my job and feed my family. And I also had to become one because I wanted to provide the stability for my students in an uncertain time. And I'm speaking very much about Friday, March 13th, 2020, when COVID hit and LAUSD and the world, or at least the United States, it feels like essentially just shut down and went on lockdown for what we thought would be a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was prepare some lessons for 3 weeks. Okay. Um, and we did. And then it's going to be more than 3 weeks. So you have to find a way to engage with the kids. Okay. Through the internet. And we did. And then, well, it's going to be until the end of the school year. Okay. We kept it pushing. Okay. The entire next year. But you have a summer break at least in between to fine tune some things. Okay. And we did. So I think teaching during this pandemic has been the most difficult part of my journey. And this is not a normal situation that most teachers would have to experience. But what kept me going is my bills still need to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
But I can work anywhere. Like you said, I can work anywhere. I can do anything. I can work with at any schools and locations that I choose. But there are rewards in doing this job. And the reward might be in when the kid calls you mom on accident,
Mm-hmm.
because that means that they know that I love them and I care for them in a way that their mothers would for them or should for them.
Mm-hmm.
So each and every time that a kid calls me mom, it warms my heart, because I'm like, okay, I've done something to get through to them outside of just academics, academics, academics. Um, each time they run up to you and give you a hug, which you didn't get through Zoom, right? But what I did get through Zoom is, Miss Grant, I drew this picture for you, and they're holding it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, what's in the picture? That's you and me, and we're in the park and we're on the swings. Okay. So you get these thank yous and these affirmations in different ways. And it's never, ever when you expect it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's always when you need it the most. So even though I quit every 5 years, I say that I am then and I don't. It's worth it. It's worth it to stay, because you can see the impact that you're making academically. You can see the data, and then you can see the kids that never spoke to their teacher the year before, and then the parents saying this is their first time that they actually like school.
Nice.
Or Miss Grant, my student, they're the parents telling you, the parents giving you the feedback. And they'll give you a whole lot of feedback, more than you ever wanted, but they'll also give you feedback that you're like, oh, thanks, I didn't know you felt that way. Of it's a good time. I'm just going to quickly say I will code switch in the classroom where I'm using my academic language, and then I use my home language, and they hear my academic language until someone cuts up and it goes right into my home language. And you kind of see the kids stop and look like, oh, she said that the same way my mom and dad and auntie and uncle and grandma say stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And then I go right back into academic language, because that home language was just for that one child, but then I'm still addressing the rest of the class in my academic language. And every time that happens new, the kids start laughing because they don't know that Miss Grant can go there and then come right back.
Mm-hmm.
So just in that moment of them laughing, I've made that connection with them, and it makes it worthwhile. So that's my long answer to a quick question.
No worries. Last question is there anything else you would like to add to this conversation that I didn't ask about being a Black educator and working in K through 12 schools?
It's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I want everyone to know that. And I want Black educators to know that, and any educators of kids, and specifically kids of color. Like, it is okay to not be okay. And it's okay to be okay. And it's okay to be joyful, and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to allow the students to see you go through those emotions. Every time that I went to work sick, right, pre-COVID, or I remember spraining my ankle, and I went to work and I told the kids, I said, I sprained my ankle and I'm not going to be able to walk around the classroom like I normally do. I just want you to know. So sweet. They were so sweet and so kind while Miss Grant had her ankle wrapped up. And if I just told the kids, hey, even being through my 2 pregnancies, I'm really not feeling good pregnant today, you guys. We're just going to get through it. That's okay, Miss Grant. Keep going. Those are the 8th graders. It's okay to show your human side to your students.
Mm-hmm.
But what's not okay is to not be prepared to teach, because they deserve the best of you, and they deserve the best curriculum that you can possibly present to them. They deserve it.
Mm-hmm. Balance again. Balance.
Yeah, balance.
Well, thank you so much for interviewing for our Fire Chat series on Black educators and hearing your voices. Again, I think the world of Black educators and the impact that they have on the lives of students, whether they're students of color or students from majority populations. The data clearly says that when students experience a Black educator, it has a positive impact on all students, regardless of their ethnicity. And so, again, thank you so much, Miss Edith Braswell-Grant,
Yay.
for being the initial interview on our Fireside Chat.
Yay. You're welcome. Thank you, Peter.